God, I'm such a savant with this technology. Just how good this is. Incredible.
Dude, I mean, you could barely write your name when I met you. So the fact that you know how to turn on StreamYard and make a YouTube video, really proud of you. Really proud of you.
And here he is, the legend, my internet dad, Matt Doyle, my professional dad. What's going on, Doyle? Thanks for joining the program and gracing me with your time.
It's nice to see you, Tom. The dad stuff, it makes me feel weird. I like to think I'm the cool uncle, or the older brother from another family or something like that. I don't know.
Well, again, maybe we could go on the theme of your attire, because you just stepped out of the world of The Gentleman on Netflix, and I appreciate you because that's a much more fun world than coming on YouTube.
I definitely have to watch. I definitely have to watch that show, I think.
So yeah, what we're here to do is lay out a Copa America and Olympic roster. I'm going to put out my kind of projections, because Doyle already wrote his Olympic projection, and then I'm sure that your Copa is going to be coming soon.
Yeah, I mean, you seem more sure about that than I am, but
to be determined. But anyway, so Doyle's got his out there. Obviously, always go read Doyle on MLSsoccer.com. Go yell at him on Twitter if you can get into his DMs. Yell at him there. I know that he prefers that. That's what he likes. All caps if you can. So I'm just going to put my teams online. He's going to tell me where I'm wrong. Before we get into the teams, I have one overarching take about the rules. It was just announced this week that the Copa America squads are increased to 26 players. And I know I sound like a boomer, and I'm generally pro player in terms of health, in terms of everybody gets more money, in terms of everything else. I think a 26-man roster is just overkill, and it's stupid. I just don't see the value in the extra 3 players.
See, I do, but I think there would be more value in just increasing the Olympics roster to 21. Right? If you want to have 3 extra spots to use this summer, bump the Olympics roster from 18 to 21 rather than the Copa roster from 23 to 26. The real value, Tom, is like, this. FIFA has always been ridiculous about injury replacements during the course of any tournament. So the value of the 26-man roster is if your first string, left back gets injured and your second string left back gets suspended, you probably have a guy who can play as a third string left back. So it makes it, I think, it sort of smooths out some of the inequities that, luck-based inequities that we can see over the course of a tournament. And I'm okay with that. I'm not as old and as angry at the world as you are, but you're a Knicks fan. So, life is just giving you nothing but pain. I get it.
My numbers to back this up. The U.S. national team, and I think Berhalter is somebody who maybe over-rotates even at small tournaments. 6 players didn't appear in any games of the national team at the World Cup, and they made the round of 16 or whatever, so it was a longer. Mexico had 5 players play 0 minutes, 4 more less than 45. So that's 9 roster spots that didn't really do anything. And Canada, I know they didn't get out of the group stage. 7 players played 0 minutes and 3 played less than 45.
So I will counter with the fact that in 2002, which is the longest run the U.S. has ever had at the World Cup in the modern era, only 1 field player didn't play. That was David Regi. And by the time that Germany game was over, right, and had we won, I mean, we would have had like 12 players total available because of injury and suspension, right? So that's a very crystal clear example of where having the 26-man roster would have been good for a team. And look, man, that's still one of the most heartbreaking moments for me as a sports fan when we lost that game to Germany. But people look back at it and be like, oh man, we were rolling, we were playing so well. If we had won that game, which the refs had stolen from us, we would have, made it all the way to the final. And we would not have, because we would have been playing Landon Donovan and guys who were, 11 through 20 on the roster because everyone else was injured or suspended. So 26, I'm a proponent of the 26-man roster, but I understand you're 1,000 years old, so you don't like it.
You know who wouldn't have made excuses for that? Tom Thibodeau, if he was the head coach of the 2002 World Cup team. All right, here's the roster 26. I'll read real fast while I put up the graphic. Goalkeepers: Matt Turner, Ethan Horvath, Roland Celentano. Center backs: Chris Richards, Tim Ream, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Myers Robinson, Austin Trusty. Right back: Joe Scally, DeAndre Yedlin. Left back: Anthony Robinson, Christopher Lund. Defensive midfielder, Tyler Adams, Johnny Cardoso. Center mids, Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, Lucas De La Torre, Malik Tillman. Wingers, Christian Pulisic, Gio Reyna, Tim Weah, Brendan Aronson, Zendejas. Strikers, Balogun, Haji Wright, Ricardo Pepe.
There are very few quibbles that I can
I'm surprised
have
by that.
with
I'm
this
disappointed.
one. I mean, I'm a little disappointed as well, but we've said for the past 18 months that the roster has gotten to the point where it's almost idiot proof.
Yeah.
Like, has Ethan Horvath really earned the second choice keeper jersey? I mean, maybe. Like, he's got more experience than the other guys. Sean Johnson's playing really well. He's maybe a little hard done by here, but like, I don't care that much about the second choice keeper. Right back is interesting just because of the tactical challenge playing without DeAndre Yedlin represents. I posited in my Olympics column that Berhalter might want to just steal Brian Reynolds from the Olympics roster because he's the second best right back he's the second best right back in the pool in terms of attacking and generating useful possession because he's still a natural attacker. And so I think he does the Serginho Dest things better than Yedlin or Scally do. So if you take Yedlin and Scally as your two right backs, you're actually saying we're kind of going to change the game model. Do you have a take on that?
Yeah. So for me, and like obviously a lot of these explanations are going to step on the Olympic roster, but I find it more valuable for Brian Reynolds to be playing more or less every minute at the Olympics than it is to maybe get a game at the Copa America, if at all, or kind of a couple cameos off the bench. And the way that this becomes like how you can replace Serginho Dest is, there's a lot of talk about Timothy Weah playing right back. And like, I wouldn't roll that out to start, but you can go to a back three and have Weah as a wing back and Anthony Robinson on the other side, and just like a different way to get more attackers on the field. So again, if they really feel like that they're losing the Serginho Dest attacking juice, then they could do that because again, as really good as I think Brian Reynolds is, and I don't think that there's anybody that can replace Serginho going forward, and even to 90%, 85%. So you're already losing the complete value that you have there. So if you just try to replace him one for one, there isn't really one for one. I know Brian Reynolds is the closest, but if you want to replace that one for one, I think it's more likely you go to a back three with Tim Weah as the wingback.
Yeah. Or, you could even play as a four because the U.S., when they play as a four, the right fullback becomes a wingback in possession. True. And the U.S. is going to have 60% possession in most of these games. I honestly think that's where the group is as a collective at this point. We saw it in the Nations League final up until the last 10 minutes. The U.S. was just utterly dominating where on the field the game was played. I like the Weah shout a lot. I really do. And I think he would be comfortable there. I think in part because he's such a smart player.
Yeah.
He'd find the right spots. And the U.S. is structured really well where it's our fullbacks don't get stranded defending 1v1 unless they strand themselves by counting dandelions, which, to be fair, both Dest and Weah Dest and Robinson managed to do against the Netherlands.
And Yedlin, for all of his veteran experience. So, I can't like that. Yeah. Like, I always thought that he was going to kind of grow out of that when he was a super promising young player into his prime. And it's like, oh, maybe when he gets to the end of his prime, and it's like, oh, maybe this is just who he is.
No, he falls asleep at the back post just as much as the other guys. The other thing that playing Weah at right back would do, it allows you to play the MMA midfield and get Gio and Pulisic on the wings. Yeah. And so there's get our best 11 players out there. Let's talk about the center backs.
Who's your starting pairing? Even before we get to the because that's more important.
I don't think we know yet. I think it probably varies game by game. I love both Ream and Robinson because they're the best, or Ream and Richards because they're the best ball playing pair, but they're also pretty weak in the air, right? So that, in my mind, that makes a strong argument for Miles Robinson, who's also the best 1v1 defender of the group, and probably the best athlete in the open field. He's the weakest distributor, maybe him or Carter Vickers. So, there are trade-offs with all of it. It's a good group. did you think about dropping one of these guys to play with the Olympics team as an overage player? Because these are our top 5 center backs right now.
So I don't think that these are our top 5 center backs
You
because,
think Walker Zimmerman is in there still?
well, no, not in the top 5, but I do have Walker Zimmerman as one of my overage players for the Olympics. The other one, Mark McKenzie.
Okay.
I think Mark McKenzie was excellent in Belgium. I think that he's an excellent distributor. I don't know if, I guess, the 1v1 defending would totally hold up as like somebody in the mix for the first choice, but like he's ahead of Trusty for me, and I think kind of easily. But I think that there's more value for both teams and individual players if Mark McKenzie's with the Olympics, where again he starts every game, and the combination of McKenzie and Zimmerman might be a little bit slow, particularly for a U23 tournament. But I'm going to have obviously another youthful center back with them if they need to spell. But obviously with your overage guys, you assume that they're the first 3 names on the team sheet. And I don't know. I really like the idea of Mark McKenzie playing at the Olympics. So rather than him being the 4th or 5th center back at this tournament, and like, again, it's going to be a lot of the consistent argument. Same thing with Reynolds. Like, yes, Reynolds should be like in a vacuum, should be on this squad, on this best squad without Dest here. But if he's going to play 35 minutes, I'd rather him play 270 or 360 or however far the Olympic team gets. And same thing with Mark McKenzie for me.
Okay, so is there any thought to putting Trusty with the Olympics team and putting Zimmerman with the full national team? Because first of all, Trusty is just entering his prime, and he's probably going to have a more robust future with the U.S. national team than Zimmerman will. So getting him 270 or 360 at the Olympics seems really valuable for one, and for two, he and McKenzie have, they have chemistry. They played like 4,000 minutes together for the Union. Granted, it was a while ago, but like they've played a lot of minutes together
until Trusty got benched and asked for a trade.
Stuff happens.
Contract stuff, but yeah, like, so that's a good point as well, and like that's probably the better pairing than say Zimmerman and McKenzie. But like, I don't know. I think Zimmerman is somebody who's been around the program for a while. Like I don't know, like Ryan Giggs played for the United Kingdom because they did it rather than Wales, England, whatever in the Olympics, like things like that. That like I wanted part of this to kind of reward, like, oh, like this isn't going to be somebody who plays a ton of minutes with the best group. Like that would be, he's like still a good player for the Olympics, and it'd be really cool to see all that. Though I am worried about where it's like.
Brian McBride had that role in the 2008 Olympics for that U.S. team, and no. Brian McBride didn't really fit with that team, so I'm not sure he helped it. Well, I mean, whether it's Trusty or Zimmerman, I think those are the 2 guys who you think about for one goes to the Copa America and one goes to the Olympics. And it's just a matter of figuring out what you value more from that thing. Zimmerman's history as a leader is really good, so he makes a lot of sense. But the chemistry thing, there's an argument for it. I have no notes at left back.
Yeah, it's really straightforward, right? Like again, like Lund, I think is a good, valuable backup. Anthony Robinson might be the most no-brainer starter next to Christian Pulisic in this team, which again, I'm trying to not overlook that just because it's not really interesting to talk about. But like I like to point it out when I can. Obviously, Caleb Wiley and John Togan would have a shout to be within, like, for that Lund position, but it's extremely obvious that they should be at the Olympics. So yeah, left back's really straightforward and boring.
Yep. I don't really have notes at D-mid, though. I guess we should talk about the fact that Johnny is eligible for the Olympics team, but you and I both have him going to Copa America.
Yeah, he surpassed that with, I mean, if he was putting up the same kind of numbers in terms of minutes and underlying stats, all that stuff with Internacional, I'd still take him to the Copa, but like, I think this would be more of a discussion. But the fact that he's doing, like, he proved it at a higher level with Real Betis. He did it. He immediately found his feet in a strong league midseason. All of that, all of the difficulties that come for that for a young player. Like, I didn't think that there was anything like a like for like replacement for Tyler Adams, and rest assured, there still is not, because that's how special I think Tyler Adams is, particularly in defensive transition. But the fact that you could even have this conversation about Johnny Cardoso is a huge win. And again, like, that is, I think he'll play plenty of minutes at the Copa America. And again, like, this is an integral position, and Tyler Adams' injury history, and particularly this season, his durability. So yeah, Johnny Cardoso to the Copa is a no-brainer, even if like he'd play more minutes maybe with the Olympic team. And the Olympic team has really, really strong central midfielders, which helps.
Yeah. Did you think about bringing a third pure defensive midfielder, or given what we've seen from Weston McKennie, over the past couple of years, and Yunus Musa really over the past 18 months, where he's been tried as a defensive midfielder, both for Greg Berhalter and at the club level. It feels like there's enough coverage.
Exactly. And like, so for some things that I value kind of in this role, and like I tried to with the Olympics, but couldn't find the right player, is like they're being a pure destroyer. Like, again, with 26 players on the roster, there should be a couple specialized players. Like, if you have a dominant aerial threat in your pool, and maybe he's the 30th best player, I think you bring him to, because that's more valuable than just like
And
a
yet you
pretty
have
good option.
Ricardo Pepi as your third forward instead of Brandon Vasquez. Okay.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. And then like at defense, but like with Tyler Adams, is that like, so I mean, and Johnny Cardoso is all of the defensive numbers that I ran through my last video with Jeff. Like, he's absolutely elite as a defensive midfielder on the defensive side of the ball for Real Betis in La Liga. So
does he pass?
You already have that.
Does he pass the eye test to that level for you?
He's a handsome boy born in New Jersey with a mustache. Yes, he passes the eye test. I don't care.
All right, fair
Does
enough. I mean,
do?
you might not be entirely unbiased about that one. I should have seen it coming. That's fair enough.
We're claiming him in New Jersey. He spent like 6 months here after he was born.
I'm going to the Ironbound tomorrow for Portuguese food, so I'm pretty hyped.
Hell yeah!
So
hell yeah. Into central midfield, and like I listed Reyna as a winger and Tillman as a midfielder. Like, that's all fluid. And same thing with Brandon Aronson. Like, I feel like that they've gone back and forth like on the roster. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, these are players that can play as the 8 or 10 if they play with the 10 again or on the wing. So we can kind of even lump this all together. But like you said, McKennie, Musa being able to play the MMA central midfield if Tim Weah is at wingback or whatever, right? Like, that's all possibility. Again, these are,
and then you still have the ability to drop to you can drop to a double pivot, right? Say you want to drop Musa and you have McKennie and Adams as the double pivot. You play Gio as a 10. You could still keep Weah as a right back. And with the way that Haji Wright has played on the wing this year, with Aronson's ability to play the wing, obviously Pulisic, like, you still have the flexibility to go in and out of formations, in and out of really game models, with where you draw your line and who's getting into the half spaces and what combinations you're actually going for. Though with all of it, if we're playing Weah at right back, and again, this is us speculating. We have no inside info that Tim Weah is going to play a second of right back. But if we're playing him there, like, it's very obvious that our attack is going to tilt right, and that we're going to try.
And you need a double pivot, I think.
Yeah, and we're gonna try to create overloads there, and that's where the double pivot would come into play.
What have you seen from like Luca Della Torre this year is kind of the first question, and second would be with the national team, is Tillman a free 8? Is he a winger, or is he just kind of one of those dudes that is just going to be like Aronson, where hey, wherever we need you, and that's going to be a really valuable squad player?
Yeah, I'll take the Della Torre stuff or question first, and like, I haven't seen a ton from him this year, but I've seen enough from him with the national team over the past few years, where none of the central midfielders in the mix have passed him or caught him or are particularly close to catching him. Maybe this time next year, maybe it'll be Tessman and Busio and whoever else, but it's not there yet. De La Torre has done enough to keep his spot, and he'll, like, look, if the U.S. make a good long run and we have to drop him in there in a semifinal, I'm not terrified of that at all. And that speaks to how far he's come as a player over the past 4 years. I mean, Tillman to me is a Raumdeuter, and he's one of those players who's better when his team is dominant. He takes a team that is already, pressing the opponent into a shell, and he's the guy who can help you pick locks by his ability to find space and combine around the box. I don't think he does anything else well on the field at this point, right? He doesn't stretch the field. He doesn't win the ball defensively. He's not like a visionary passer. He's a very good combiner around the box, but he's not the guy who it's a defense splitting through ball or a big switch to one of those overloads. So that limits his usefulness in terms of who you can play him against, what the game state can be, and what formation you can use. That's fine. Like you said, it's a big roster. There needs to be specialists. He's a specialist, and it's like if it's late in the game and we're searching for a goal against whoever, he's a guy who you bring onto the field.
Absolutely.
You do not start him against Argentina or Brazil or Uruguay or even Mexico or arguably even Canada, because he's just not that type of player at this point in his. But he's what, 21, so like he's got plenty of time.
I really like it. And one, I think that was the best encapsulation I've seen of Malik Tillman or read or anything. So I thought that was brilliant. And two, just hearing you say Raumdauer makes me really badly want to close this out and play Football Manager. Do you want to say
fire up that Bayern Munich save? I get it.
Say stuff like Segundo Valonde, inverted fullback, and I'm gone, man.
Do they use Trequartista and Enganche in that one?
Yeah. And it's great that those are so different. Those two.
One's Italian, one's Argentinian.
Anyway, so and then for the wingers, like, look, Pulisic, career year, phenomenal. Again, I talked a lot about him in my last video with Jeff. I think he was the best American in 2023-24 season. I think Jedi Robinson was second if we had to kind of rank it like that. Again, phenomenal. Everything worked out so great. This is the player. He's gonna have a big tournament. He's done everything over the last 9 months to suggest that he's in the best possible position to continue to do that. And I don't have anything other to say than he's obviously a starter and he's playing every minute he's available for. So
yeah, I mean, I still think he's at his best on the right when he is away from the build-up play, but that's not going to be how it works with you. And look, the real test for Christian Pulisic is going to be how he does in the open field. Because if you go back and you watch the U.S. performance in Qatar, the phase of play in which we came up short was in the counterattack, time and time again. Against Wales, in the second half against Wales, we had 7 opportunities to get out on the break and we did exactly what you want to do with the lead, which is drop your line, play center field, encourage crosses, create turnovers, and create run-out opportunities. We had 7 opportunities. 5 of them were on Pulisic's foot in space, and none of them turned into shots. And that was brutal. And then in the middle of the second half against the Netherlands, it was 2-1. The game was still in the balance, and Pulisic gets on the ball at midfield with Hadji running into space, and there's no pressure on him. It is a ragged and frazzled Dutch back line. He has just the clearest path to play a through ball, and he overcooks it. He overcooks it by a good 10 yards, and that has to be on the money. So look, I thought in 2022 did a good job of putting the game at the feet of our best players. I agree with you. Christian Pulisic is still our best player based upon what we saw from him this club season. He's got to be better in those moments.
For sure.
Also, look, if Gio Reyna is healthy and not being an asshole, he's going to play virtually every single minute.
Agreed.
And Reyna might be Reyna is more talented than Christian Pulisic. And if he can stay healthy and he can stay out there, then that probably takes some of the playmaking pressure off of Pulisic, which we saw in the Nations League final. And that is exciting to me because I think this is a huge opportunity for this team to take a step forward, as a sort of collective and as an org. And we need that.
Oh, yeah, particularly with that World Cup qualifying and everything. This is such a crucial tournament. Oh, yeah. The less sexy discussion points here. I have Alejandro Zendejas as the last winger because I don't know. Again, I you could talk younger players into this spot and again for the long term probably, but there is no point of pulling somebody from the Olympics to be the 25th man on the roster next to the third goalkeeper and really not play at all. So that's for me for Zendejas. I know that you already disagree with Pepe being the forward. So I said Balogun, Pepe, and Hadji, and I think it's in that order for me. I still think that Ricardo Pepe does more of the 9 stuff that Berhalter wants than Hadji Wright. Plus, Hadji Wright, some of his best moments came at left wing as like a wide forward, inside forward, wide target, whatever a Football Manager term you want to use, Mr. Tactics. And I think that Pepe will have the second most 9 minutes. And then Haji Wright is more of what I was talking about of like, okay, he's somebody that offers something different than the other attackers. And you could put him as a wide forward to really kind of overload chasing a result. Again, I think he's had an excellent season for Coventry. Maybe I'm just wrong and he'll be ahead of Pepe. And then it'll look a little silly for Pepe to be here and not the Olympics. But another thing I say is you have to man manage. What about Ricardo Pepe's last 3 years signifies to you that he would be okay and happy to go to the Olympics and be somebody who would like, I honest to God think we could get a Gio Reyna situation if they were like, hey, Ricardo, do you want to go to the Olympics? No, not do you want, you're going to the Olympics. So that's another thing that I think is at play here.
I love Rico Pepe. He's not a Gio Reyna level talent.
No, he's not. But that
if
that
Pepe throws
matter, whatever you think.
If Pepe throws a fit like that, we have 6 other number 9s who can play those minutes, including the 2 guys on your list. I want to point out you think that Pepe is ahead of Haji Wright. Following it, like Flo Balogun was supposed to start the Nations League final, and he picked up a knock. Mm-hmm. Pepe was on that roster, as was Haji Wright. Of those 2, Berhalter had his choice to play in a title game. He started Haji Wright over Pepe.
That's
so
fair.
what? And Pepe has barely played since then. So what makes you think that Pepe is ahead of Haji Wright in the pecking order?
I just still think that that's the more likely long-term fit. And again, like you said, the short-term, that's all very important. I feel that, and it's going to be, and look, whatever we say right now, whatever I think, and again, you have some really good talking points, some really good arguing points rather on your side there. When they announced the pre-Olympic, the pre-Copa friendly rosters, which is going to be bigger, and I would imagine both of these players are going to be on it.
Oh, yeah.
What happens in training, what happens in those friendlies is going to be more important than whatever the hell that I say now. But I still think that he does more of the 9 stuff in this formation, in this game model. And I know he has a higher ceiling than Haji Wright does, just given their age profiles, everything else that comes through here. Again, that's not to take anything away from Haji Wright. I was extremely impressed by Haji Wright this season. I didn't know what it was going to look like.
Why do you hate Haji Wright? You seem to hate him.
He started off slow, and like the way that he really came on at the end of the season and performed in those big moments was super useful, because a lot of people were watching that FA Cup game against Manchester United more than, say, just a Tuesday Champo night against QPR. So that's really sticking in people's minds. But yeah, he's more informed than Pepe, as you said. Pepe hasn't played much, kind of down the stretch for PSV, all that stuff. But for me, I'm still taking the long play on talent and the more snug game model.
So I don't think this is a long play on talent, Summer. I think this is a let's try to win the damn thing summer. And playing Pepe as I love Duncan Robinson. Ricardo Pepe's a better soccer player than Duncan Robinson right now. If Ricardo Pepe is starting as the 9 and playing 90 minutes every game at the Olympics, that gives us a better chance of winning Olympic gold or medaling of some sort, while not dinging our Copa America chances at all, barely at all, because as we saw in the Nations League, Berhalter seems to think that Pepe is 3rd at best on the depth chart. And I would argue that given the way Josh Sargent has played and his underlying numbers and his actual numbers are better than any other number 9 in the pool.
Yes.
And he was the first choice number 9 at the World Cup. I think that Josh Sargent is going to end up coming into this tournament as the starting number 9 for the US.
Well, so I've almost kind of forgot to mention this. The only reason that Josh Sargent isn't on my roster is we had a headline on The Athletic yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever the hell this comes out, that said Josh Sargent, Copa America in doubt due to ankle injury. So I should have noted that when I listed off the squad. There's probably going to be comments correctly that I hadn't said anything about it yet, because that's on me for not mentioning, because clearly he's in the top 2, if not, like you said, like he might have been the starter over Balogun, just given how the seasons went. But once again, an extremely unfortunate, untimely injury. He's getting to the point where you can't rely on him for availability. That can change. Gio Reyna was like this over World Cup qualifying, and it's not injuries that kept him out of the Nottingham Forest lineup. It was, tactical decisions or managerial decisions. So that can change. Christian Pulisic used to have much more injury worry than he did, and then this year, the last couple of years, he's been much more durable. All of that stuff, but right now, cannot rely on Josh Sargent. And when I see a headline that he's in doubt, I'm not assuming that he's going to heal quicker and be able to go. So the only reason I don't have him on this roster is because of that. And if he is, then Pepe's with the Olympics.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's a good explanation. I'm gonna choose to be optimistic and say that Josh Sargent is going to make it to Copa America. Though, given that the Olympics takes place a month later than Copa America, if he can't play, all right, you bring Ricardo Pepi to Copa America, and then you bring Josh Sargent as one of the overage players. Because again, I love Duncan Robinson. Josh Sargent's a
Duncan
better player.
I'll let the first one go.
Oh my God, I've been in NBA playoffs lockdown mode, man.
Yeah, Duncan Robinson has been playing for a while. I like that idea, and that's a good point as well, just with the timing. I don't see a world in which Norwich lets him go. Like, there's probably going to be, like, you know how congested the championship schedule is even in August. If he's gone for 3 weeks,
are we sure he's going to be a Norwich player?
I would lean that way. I still need to make calls on this, obviously, but when I was doing this whole thing last year, like, he loves it there. Like, his family settled, all of this. And financially, I don't know how many teams out, like, unless it's a Premier League team coming, which could be. Like, there's not a Bundesliga team that's coming close to his salary, even in the championship. So it's unless a Premier League team wants him, and I think he's in a really good spot. So why leave? Anyway, I do think that, and I think that if he misses 3.5 weeks, that could be, I don't know, 9 games in the championship. So who knows? Onto the Olympic squad. And again, I know that we answered a lot of the questions and talking points, so this will be much shorter. Goalkeepers: Gaga Slonina, Chris Brady. Right back: Brian Reynolds, Nathan Harriel. Center back: overage Walker Zimmerman, overage Mark McKenzie, and then Jalen Neal. Left backs: John Tolkien, Caleb Wiley. Defensive mid: Tanner Tessman, Aiden Morris. Central midfielders: Gianluca Busio, Jack McGlynn, Cole Bassett. Wingers, and a couple of these players can play a few other positions, which is very useful. Diego Luna, Paredes, Griffin Yao, Paxton Aronson, and strikers: overage Brandon Vasquez and Duncan McGuire.
It's hard to argue with any of this. I mean, I would have Patrick Schulte in there.
Mm-hmm.
He's age eligible. He wouldn't count as an overage player. And I think he's probably a little bit more well-rounded than Chris Brady is right now.
Absolutely.
And arguably more so than Gaga Slonina either. There's a guy like Maxi Dietz who's played significant minutes in Germany. I think Jalen Neal's better as a third center back.
That's where I was at too, because I kind of went back and forth with Dietz and Neal, and then it's kind of push comes to shove. I was like, I think Neal has more talent. And again, if the idea is Zimmerman McKenzie to play the most minutes, then, like, one, this isn't as important, but two, like so I think that it'd be hard done on Dietz to miss his roster if, again, they go with 2 overage center backs, because if they didn't have any overage players, I think he's starting. So again, I think that was a really tough cut from this team.
I like bringing Harriel because he can be your 4th center back as well. Mm-hmm. I can't find any real argument with the central midfield trio of well, obviously Tessman and Morris. They like write him in pen as the D mids. Your central midfield trio of Busio, McGlynn, Bassett. Like, well done, Cole Bassett. Played yourself.
My Cole Bassett stock. I figured,
right?
We've had this argument for 3 years. He's back.
He's been excellent for Colorado this year. I think he has an edge over Indy Vasilev at this point. Nico Chakiris,
there's more to his game, I think. I mean,
I agree.
There's similar profiles, but I think there's more to his game.
I mean, Cole Bassett is such a dynamic boxer, Ivor. He gets you goals out of patterns of play. And if there's one thing that Greg Berhalter loves, is getting goals out of patterns of play. So I kind of expect he's playing himself in there. McGlynn, I don't think has been great, but he's going to be there and should be. And Busio is a no-brainer. Yeah. Wing, to me, Luna, Paredes are no-brainers. Yao and Paxton Aronson over, Ted Kuda-Pietro, Cade Cowell.
You didn't even write Ted Kuda-Pietro in the mix section of your list. I just want to point that out.
That was an oversight.
You had Luna, Brian Gutierrez, and Paredes for the wingers, and then you named as other options Kate Gowell, Paxton Aronson, Griffin Yao, a few others.
Right.
Like Esmir Bajratevic.
Yeah. So all right. So I'll make the case for Ted Kudipietro here. He didn't play with the U23s last autumn. I think it was November when they had that camp. He was with the US Pan Am team playing
Yeah, that's
against,
right.
and he was awesome. Like he was the best player on that team, which was like a U23B team. And that carried over his form from MLS in 2023. When he's been healthy, he's carried that over to 2024. And his dynamism as a 1v1 player is something that any team could use on the wing. And I don't think Paxton Aronson brings that. I like Griffin Yao a lot. He's got a good engine. He hits a good cross. He's not a 1v1 player either. And so if we're looking at the deep winger spots as guys who can come off the bench and change a game with a moment of magic, I think Ted Kudipietro might have a better argument than these other guys.
In that realm, I think that then I would lean Esmir or Kate Cowell. Kate Cowell because of the elite athleticism, and Esmir I think is a better 1v1 kind of dribbler because I think he has the more physical tools than Ted Kubietro. If this was a different system, if it was something more like what DC United plays, because again with Brandon Vasquez and Duncan McGuire on my hypothetical squad, those are two really physical center forwards, and nobody's Christian Benteke, but at least Ted Kudipietro has really good chemistry, I think, with Benteke. And if there was a different way of what this game model wanted to be, then Teddy KDP would be the better option for this. But if like I don't see him as a traditional kind of out and out winger, and like that's like in terms of like a space eater, like Cole Bassett, that's kind of the slot for this roster where it's like the second center mid if you play with an 8 rather than like somebody playing off a center forward or somebody playing as like an inside winger with a tons of overlap, which maybe that could happen on the left wing, but I haven't really seen that from the U23s and just in general. But yeah, I think he's within the mix. But for me, I'd still lean a couple other guys.
So there's something that we should both try to just accept deep in our souls. Kate Cowell's going to be on this roster. I don't think either of us would pick him for the team, given how poor he's been.
I don't think it's egregious.
No, I don't think it's egregious. But if you look at what he has done in age level play, including against France, the U.S. just drew or beat France last month, 2 months ago. I think it was in March, and he absolutely bossed that game physically from the wing. He's going to be there. He's just a superior athlete to everybody else in the mix, and that is at this level enough. Probably my guess would be at the expense of Griffin Yao, because Griffin Yao is the one who sort of fits the north-south runner mold of the group that you've called in. So it's something that we should get used to, and it's something that U.S. fans should get used to. So Duncan McGuire, not Duncan Robinson, is a big, strong, excellent in the air, good combining center forward. And as the overage center forward, you brought Brandon Vasquez, who is also all those things. Now, we already talked about Josh Sargent and Ricardo Pepi. I think one of those guys would make sense, assuming they could get released. The other name in the mix is Jesus Ferreira. Is there an argument to bring him because he's a different archetype of forward?
Yeah, there's a really strong argument for that. And I like using the overage Olympic selections, as I was kind of saying before, of like guys who are in the pool, but at this point, like we didn't even mention his name like as just a throwaway for the Copa, right? Like he was started a game at the World Cup, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, whatever, 2 years ago, sorry, or the time frame. No, 18 months ago.
18 months, yeah.
So like I think that's a really good shout. And if like you were saying, making fun of me for pointing out, specialists on the end of the roster, like if Brandon Vasquez isn't the overage player here, then he should be the kind of 26 man on the roster as okay, crap, like we need need an aerial presence up top. So I think that that's an easy kind of maneuver if that's where you want to go. And like you said, because he's a different profile to Duncan McGuire, and then as we've seen a few times with the senior national team of him playing as like a second forward when they're chasing a goal or whatever, just kind of changing things up to try to be more attacking. So yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense in terms of squad building, but I trust Brandon Vasquez to score goals a whole lot more than I trust Jesus Ferreira. So we can have all of these logical and good arguments. Dude puts the ball in the back of the net. Game's up right on a spreadsheet, mate.
I think the even better argument is Duncan McGuire starts the first game, gets injured in the 60th minute. Oh no, we don't have a real backup number 9. If Jesus Ferreira is the only other number 9 on the roster, then we are really handcuffed in how we play. Whereas if you bring 2 true number, like this is a lesson we needed to have learned years ago, because a good chunk of the time in international competitions in the aughts, back in the Brian McBride, Edson Buttle days, we wouldn't bring enough true number 9s. We wouldn't bring a backup to the guy who was sort of the focal point of the attack. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. And whether it's McGuire and Vasquez or McGuire and Pepe or McGuire and Sargent, there should be 2 of those guys. And Jesus Ferreira, unfortunately for him, is going to be the odd man out.
Yeah, but I think that's a viable option. So yeah, I think
I would get it. I would absolutely get it.
I wouldn't argue at all.
Yeah, I would still argue. But like
I've learned, just like the Bill Burr bit. It's just like, yeah, hey, fair enough, and then move on with your day. That's what being on Twitter so much will do. And it's just like, man, you could just not like something, and then that's it. It's okay. Move on. Anyway, on that note, on that life advice note, as I'm going with the old man stuff. Anyway, Matthew Doyle, thank you so very much for joining.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to interrupt your exit at this point, because we never sort of addressed this. We both value Copa America significantly more than we do the Olympics. If the U.S. gets out of the group in style, but then loses in the first knockout round in the Copa America, while at the same time medaling at the Olympics, is that a successful summer?
No. Oh, sorry. You meant like the literal medal. I thought you meant like middling. I was like, no.
No. Medal. Like wins a medal.
Yeah, like in the context of saying Olympics, that should have
finishes in the top 3.
No, because I think it needs to be. You need to win a knockout game at Copa. I mean, and I don't know, even if you win a gold medal with the Olympics, like these 23 players, 20 with the 18 plus 2. These 20 players aren't going to be, I mean, maybe a couple become impact players for the 26 World Cup, but like, it doesn't even matter if they win gold if the Copa doesn't get out of the group stage, like God forbid, or if they again get just absolutely trounced in the first knockout round. It's not good enough. Like, it doesn't really matter what the Olympic team does. And I think both of us value the Olympics very highly too. Mm-hmm. I just don't think that makes a difference, because it's 2 completely different teams, 2 completely competitions.
Okay. Semifinals or bust. That's what you said.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the pressure is here. Gotta step up, and because then, what are you gonna say? Oh, the World Cup, that's when we'll actually make a deeper run. Oh, we need more time. It's like Gerard Nykamp saying that he needs 6 more transfer windows after.
I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's that bad.
Well, I think the reaction is going to be worse, because it's more important, and then I wouldn't blame it, right? Like, at some point, it's got to be about results. And I thought that the World Cup 22 was fine, but like, if you keep on saying no, more time to do trust the process kind of stuff, at some point, it's a results-based business.
You're just bitter. You're just bitter about the Sixers. You're just clearly bitter.
I'd like
Joel Embiid.
It's like I feel sorry for you. I don't think about you at all. Enjoy Cabo and Embiid. On that note, appreciate you as always, my friend, making time for me when you don't have to. That's very kind of you.
Thanks for having me on, Tom.
Cheers.